newcomer children and youth in the K-12 school system here in Manitoba. This includes working to improve the success of newcomer children and youth in the areas of literacy, academic, language, high school graduation and wellness, as well as ensuring that youth have the tools, supports, and opportunities to pursue post-secondary education. So we currently advocate under 6 key priority areas. So that is to increase involvement of newcomer parents in their children's education as well as in their school involvement. We look to advocate for specialized supports for older youth with interrupted schooling or limited education. We advocate for the professionalization of EAL, and we advocate for increased mental health supports for newcomer youth in schools and community. And the 2 that are relevant to my presentation today is we advocate for equity within the school system, as well as research on emerging issues. So what we often find when we're trying to approach our advocacy work around our key priority areas is that firsthand experience of community members, youth parents, are never really captured in publicly accessible data. So when our students and youth tell us firsthand that they find it hard to feel accepted in their school environment, that they don't feel that they have allies in their teachers and school administration, because there's no one that is there that has experienced what they have to understand their challenges and barriers, we begin to ask the question of why. So this report that I think was all that was distributed to everyone, and hopefully you've had a chance to peruse through it or to have a read through. This report was the beginning of that conversation. So the purpose of the report is to promote evidence-based strategies for the development and implementation of equity-based education programs. The guiding principle of that report is based on the belief that in order for educational outcomes to improve for newcomer students, that they must see themselves better reflected in the curriculum and teaching staff in their schools. The report is based on a survey that took place in the spring of 2019 involving the 6 school divisions in Winnipeg, the faculties of education at the U of W and U of M, University of St. Boniface, and Brandon University as well. And the report is based on the themes of the responses of the survey. So this included underrepresentation of newcomers on school boards here in Winnipeg, underrepresentation of newcomers as teachers in the 6 school divisions here in Winnipeg, and underrepresentation of newcomer students in the Bachelor of Education programs at the faculties of education. So one of the great things about the report is that we've broken it down into calls to action for various groups, recognizing that this is a whole system approach that needs to be addressed from all areas. So we've broken it down into calls to action for community, for school divisions, for faculties of education, for the provincial government, and for stakeholder collaborations. So the motion that's going to be put forth is regarding a creation of an ad hoc working group, so that the calls to action that are in this report, we can begin the conversations about how or if they can be implemented within the Winnipeg School Division. So the one call to action area that I really wanted to focus on was stakeholder collaborations and the importance of that. So the representation of newcomer and racialized persons. I use that term because that is what's used in the report, but one of the things that we do want to recognize is terms like racialized persons or visible minority are outdated. One of the things that the Newcomer Education Coalition is hoping to do in the future is canvass community to see what the terminology is that they would like to be referred to as. Currently in employment equity policies or anything like that, visible minority is the terminology that's used. So we use that in the report, but we do recognize that it is outdated. So as I was saying, so the representation of newcomer and racialized persons' voices needs to be at the decision-making tables in order to confront systemic racism. and imbalanced power and social relations for initiatives to address the shortage of newcomer and racialized teachers in the city of Winnipeg. So we looked to newcomer, so in creating stakeholder collaborations, we look to have voices from places like newcomer organizations, different levels of governments, Manitoba School Boards Association, Manitoba Association of School Superintendents, deans of the Faculty of Education, and like I said, the province of Manitoba, specifically in the Department of Education, should establish a more newcomer and racialized teacher initiative. And that looks like ensuring that we can identify barriers faced by racialized teachers, or faced by racialized persons to become teachers. Develop recruitment strategies to increase the pool of racialized teachers to become, or racialized persons to become teachers. The development and implementation of teacher education programs for newcomers and racialized persons that address their needs and aspirations, which includes transition programs for term contract teachers to permanent contract positions, transition programs for substitute teachers to permanent contract positions, transition programs for internationally educated teachers, the development and implementation of retention and promotion initiatives within school divisions for racialized teachers and staff. And we also hope that this stakeholder collaboration group can develop a 5-year action plan with clear benchmarks and timelines, including annual update reports that would be released publicly to promote transparency and accountability. So with the motion that will be coming forth, NEC hopes to be part of that ad hoc working group to bring in that community voice, as well as our partners that are around the table currently. So we wanted to just speak on behalf of that motion and support it and the importance of that.
So thank you, Ms. Vyrauen, for presenting your information to the Board of Trustees. So a motion isn't required to receive these presentations, but trustees, do you have any questions of Ms. Vyrauen? Trustee Chen?
Thank you, Kathleen, for taking the time to present at our board meeting. Since you mentioned the timeline, so I just want to ask a question. What does, like, on behalf of the NEC, what kind of timeline you think in terms of making recommendations to the board this committee can make?
So the hope with the report was that it's an annual report, or so we would like to ensure that we are going through our calls to action on an annual basis to see if there's any progress in them. The stakeholder collaboration, we gave it a 5-year, looking at a 5-year gap to develop action items and whatnot, but we do look at it annually as well. We think that it is important to any calls to action that we do have, that we do review them annually.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions by trustees? Okay, seeing none, I just want to thank you, Ms. Vyrauen, for coming and sharing with us the report and your hopes of what we do with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now I would like to call upon Mr. Sims to begin his presentation to the board. In accordance with Procedural Bylaw 1263, Section 32.8, you shall be granted 10 minutes to make your presentation to the board regarding Newcomer Education Committee. Is Mr. Sims on the line with us?
Yes, he is on the line. Mr. Sims, if you can unmute your mic.
Is that unmuted now?
Yes, you're unmuted now.
Okay, thanks. Could I have that first item? Yeah, thank you. So thanks for allowing CETA to make a presentation to the Board of Trustees this evening. We're speaking in favor of the motions that the board will be looking at tonight to establishing a newcomers education advisory committee and to look at a range of things, including some of the issues raised in the Newcomers Education Coalition State of Equity and Education report. I think that it's really important to see that over the years that trustees or administration have really done well when they've worked with the community to look at significant issues that are facing the Winnipeg School Division. And I think with Bill 64, the Education Modernization Act, it's a really good idea to build these advisory committees like the Newcomers Education Advisory Committee, and I know you're looking at the Indigenous Education Advisory Committee, so that there are more voices that are, working closely with the school division on some of the issues, and it isn't just trustees or school staff having to raise issues, but we're mobilizing some broader community partnerships to do that. So I think the establishing a Newcomers Education Coalition is really Education Advisory Committee is a good step in that direction. I think one of the things that I know people are working on in the community is the Bill 64, and no one knows what's in that the context of that bill right now. And I do think that we can think about proactive things to be looking at doing. And I've put together this kind of image of some multi-dimensions that we need to look at as we're moving forward. And so it looks like there will be some changes that will be happening in the next number of months that will be announced. I think one of the challenges is that in Winnipeg, there are 54 school trustees in the 6 school divisions. Other cities across Canada have 7 to 9 trustees. So that really sticks out. And I just don't think the status quo is going to remain around keeping 6 school divisions together. So that we need to hope for the best, but plan for the potential worst kind of thing. So if they're looking at moving to sort of 1 school division, one of the options and one of the circles they're looking at is, if you're looking at organizational change, it makes sense to take the largest school division and build the other 5 school divisions into one kind of organization. We can see, the Winnipeg School Division has 33,000 students. The other 5 school divisions have 62,000 students, or about, on average 12,000 students each. And some are as low as about 8,000 students. So, I think that is sort of one option to think about, how, looking at expanding the Winnipeg School Division as an option is one division. I think, other options that we need to think about is that that might not happen, and we can hope for it to happen. But what are some other things to think about in terms of a 1 school division, or we know, as in Nova Scotia, that the school, and in Quebec, the school divisions have been eliminated, and there's just a advisory committee to the province. And so I guess one of the things we see is important to have a vision about the idea of, what can we work towards given some of these changes are happening. And I think it'd be interesting for the community and school divisions to take the lead in reclaiming the name modernization, so that the Education Modernization Act is something that the province will define in terms of what they'd like to see have happen. I think it'd be interesting if the Winnipeg School Division and the community began to define what is modernization. And I think an education equity office is something that looks at that kind of modernization. And I think groups like the Newcomers Education Advisory Committee that you're looking at setting up would be important partners to look at how do we bring that idea of a vision for modernization. And I think some of the equity issues that can be looked at with an equity lens in an equity office looks at early childhood nursery programs. The Winnipeg School Division for over 50 years has funded a nursery program. That's an equity lens. That's an important part of equity agenda in education. And so, I think it's important to talk about the importance of those kind of things. I think, the Winnipeg School Division has played a leadership role in the whole area of employment equity. Only one school division out of 6 in Winnipeg has an employment equity policy. I think that, to me, modernization is looking at that employment equity be a key kind of feature for all education in the province and in the city of Winnipeg. And I think there's going to be an equity lens that's going to need to be looked at the kind of COVID learning loss issues as we look at recovery in terms of issues around the issue of how we move forward. So I guess, what we're asking, and I won't have time to get into the second item, that if there's some questions I could raise that of, what are some of the elements of an education equity office. But I think there are some proactive things that we can do. And to me, this is about modernization, that equity is an important lens, and that equity is, it influences how we do programming with many groups in our community. And I think some of that work means pulling together some of these different groups that are affected by equity issues that could be involved in an equity office, and how do we all work together to look at how this can be something that could take place. I think, and I know my time's winding down, that a concrete leadership role that the Winnipeg School Division could play is to set up an education equity office. There are a number of components that you have right now, but they're in different parts of your organization. I think if we provide a focal point that puts those kind of different resources under a place like an education equity office, that could be a concrete example of how things could move ahead, whether there's 6 school divisions and Winnipeg School Division plays that leadership role, whether there's one school division and that could be a leadership kind of a role that's being played to demonstrate how that could take place, or whether there's no school divisions, that an education equity office could be modeled out as something to do. So I appreciate having the opportunity to make this presentation, and I know that there will be work done in the next 2 or 3 months of mobilizing around this idea of a proactive agenda around an education equity office. And I think the Newcomers Education Advisory Committee that you're looking at tonight could be one of the important groups that could look at this kind of idea of modernization on the community's perspective and progressive agendas that the school divisions are looking at.
Thank you, Mr. Sims, for presenting your information to the Board of Trustees. A motion is not required to receive presentations. Trustees, do you have any questions of Mr. Sims? Trustee Chen? Trustee Chen, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Sims, for presenting. I just have a question regarding Education Equity Office. Do you know any other school boards in other cities or provinces have had this kind of office?
Yeah, thanks for the question. We've been doing some research on this, and out of kind of a negative situation, and I think I talked about this in December, the Peel District School Board, the second largest school board in all of Canada, had an external review of its organization because of issues of systemic racism. The external review identified many things that needed to be done. One of them was to set up, and their words were, a robust education equity office. And the school board was given some time to work on those things. It wasn't able to meet those expectations that the province had put out in the external review. So the provincial government now has taken over as of June of 2020, taken over running, that's under supervision, the Peel District School Board. And so the mandate of the supervisor is to implement the external recommendations. And so, the idea of an education equity office, and some of the elements of an education equity office I sent out to the board in the second page that you have in your board package. And, it looks at a wide range of equity issues and looking at that focus. So, yeah, there are other places. I know the Toronto District School Board also has an equity office. As organizations get larger, that people see that that's an important place to have a voice to make those kind of equity issues as a highlight on things. And just as a sort of second follow-up to what other places have had education equity offices, when the Toronto school division or city had, I think it was 5 or 6 school districts, and then it got consolidated into one. But there was a North York school district that had an equity office, and Enid Lee, who has done some work with the Winnipeg School Division over the years, was actually the sort of lead staff person in that equity education equity office. And we're bringing out Enid on January 26th, and we can send out invitations to trustees and members of the administration to hold a webinar on what is the role of an education equity office and what's the potential for an education equity office, so that we can sort of begin to build the dialogue around that. And I guess the way we're looking at that is looking at the role of an education equity office is looking at education modernization in action. And so I think we are looking at how do we look at moving forward on things, and looking at the education equity office as being one of those things.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions of Mr. Sims? Seeing none, I would like to thank you very much, Mr. Sims, for sharing your presentation with the Board of Trustees. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, reading and confirming of minutes, moved by Trustee Reid, seconded by Trustee Shinkowski, that the minutes dated December 7th, 2020 be approved as distributed. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Presentation and consideration of reports. Finance Personnel Committee Report number 4-2020, dated December 7th, 2020. Moved by Trustee Broughton, seconded by Trustee Reid, that the Finance Personnel Committee Report number 4-2020, dated December 7th, 2020, be received as information. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Governance and Public Relations Committee Report number 2-2020, dated December 9th, 2020, moved by Trustee Shinkowski, seconded by Trustee Chen, that the Governance and Public Relations Committee Report number 2-2020, dated December 9th, 2020, be received as information. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Trustee Shinkowski, do you have any recommendations?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair. I hereby move that the terms of the reference for the Governance and Public Relations Committee be approved.
Seconded by Trustee Chen. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. 5.3 Central District Advisory Committee Report number 2-2020, dated December 8th, 2020. Moved by Trustee Reed, seconded by Trustee Chen, that the Central District Advisory Committee Report number 2-2020, dated December 8th, 2020, be received as information. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. 5.4 Inner City Advisory Committee Report number 2-2020, dated December 9th, 2020, moved by Trustee Chen, seconded by Trustee Dumont, that the Inner City Advisory Committee Report number 2-2020, dated December 9th, 2020, be received as information. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. 5.5 South District Advisory Committee Report number 2-2020, dated December 10th, 2020, moved by Trustee Dumont, seconded by Trustee Broughton, that the South District Advisory Committee Report number 2-2020, dated December 10th, 2020, be received as information. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. 5.6 Student Advisory Committee Report number 2-2020, dated December 15th, 2020, moved by Trustee Broughton, seconded by Trustee Dumont, that the Student Advisory Committee Report number 2-2020, dated December 15th, 2020, be received as information. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. 5.7 North District Advisory Committee Report number 2-2020, dated December 15th, 2020, moved by Trustee Reed, seconded by Trustee Shinkowski, that the North District Advisory Committee Report number 2-2020, dated December 15th, 2020, be received as information. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. French Advisory Committee Report number 2-2020, dated December 17th, 2020, moved by Trustee Dumont, seconded by Trustee Chen, that the French Advisory Committee Report number 2-2020, dated December 17th, 2020, be received as information. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. New business. 6.1 Newcomer Education. Motion notice that was given by Trustee Chen on December 7th, 2020. Moved by Trustee Chen, seconded by Trustee Broughton, that the Board of Trustees of the Winnipeg School Division establish an ad hoc committee entitled Newcomer Education Committee, which is comprised of trustees, administration, representatives from newcomer communities, newcomer parents, and community members to provide recommendations based on the newcomers' State of Equity in Education report. That trustees blank and blank be nominated as members to the ad hoc Newcomer Education Committee. in accordance with Procedural Bylaw 1263, Clause 42.2, states that any member who introduces a motion which results in the establishment of a special committee shall chair the committee. C, that administration, in consultation with the committee trustees, develop the terms of reference for the Newcomer Education Committee for the approval by the Board of Trustees. And D, that the committee provide a report including any recommendations for consideration or approval by the Board of Trustees. Trustee Chen, would you like to speak on this?
Yes, I'd like to. Thank you,
You will
Chair.
have 5 minutes, okay?
Thank you. My fellow trustees, as the only immigrant and visible minority school trustee on the board, I'm serving this motion and hoping that through the Newcomer Education Committee and the discussions that will take place at the table related to the Newcomer's State of Equity in Education report, issues of inclusion and systemic racism are to be brought to the forefront. The purpose of this committee is clearly stated in the motion, which is to look at the calls to action in the report and make any recommendations to the board that will help improve equity in the WSD, which may be related to policies, programs, communications, and governance, etc. Before we discuss any issues, we must acknowledge the underlying issue, which is systemic racism, the unbalanced power and exclusion in decision-making structures, and how these decision-making structures impact the distribution of rights, opportunities, and resources. We must acknowledge and address any systemic barriers faced by racialized persons in the education system. This report looked at these issues through a lens of systemic racism and identified limited representation of newcomer and racialized persons at the decision-making tables of boards of school trustees. In Winnipeg, only 3 out of 54 school trustees are immigrant and visible minority. The shortages of racialized teachers in public schools in this report points to the urgent need that in order for educational outcomes to improve for newcomer and racialized students, we need a more diverse workforce. WSD students come from a wide range of socioeconomic, linguistic, cultural, and ethnic backgrounds. They must see themselves better reflected in the curriculum and teaching staff in their schools. Studies have shown the relationship between diversity of teachers and students' educational attainment. School divisions will also benefit from diverse representation. Internationally educated teachers can contribute a lot to the teaching workforce and can help fill shortages of teachers and educational assistants, such as we have seen during the pandemic. I personally believe that internationally educated teachers come with a broad range of backgrounds and skills. We must value these skills. It doesn't matter if they learned in Canada or abroad. It is also an asset to speak another language and have the unique experience from outside of Canada. Representation matters. As we heard from tonight's delegations, it is important to include voices of newcomer parents and committee members in the Newcomer Education Committee. I'm confident that we will move forward with the motion, and I'm looking forward to all the discussions stemming from this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Chen. Is there any discussion? So, Trustee Broughton, so just a reminder to everyone, before we open the floor for discussion, I would like to remind trustees that section 23.1 of the procedural bylaw 1263 also states that a member shall not speak longer than 10 minutes nor twice on the same motion, unless in explanation of something which may have been misunderstood or in reply to a question not to exceed 2 minutes. Trustee Broughton, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very much in support of this motion and will be voting in favor of this motion. My only challenge is well, technically very accurate that this is an ad hoc committee. I hope when the terms of reference are developed that the word ad hoc could be removed from the process. I don't want members of the community that give of their time to attend a community feel that it's kind of labeled as kind of an ad hoc thrown together and doesn't have significance to the board, because I believe it does have significance. I think we can appreciate that it comes with the title of ad hoc within our organizational structure, but we don't necessarily need to include that in the name when it comes to defining and reporting on this committee in the future.
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Broughton. Is there any other comments, discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to move on. Moved by Trustee Chen, seconded by Trustee Broughton. A, that the Board of Trustees of the Winnipeg School Division establish an ad hoc committee entitled Newcomer Education Committee, which is comprised of trustees, administration, representatives from newcomer communities, newcomer parents, and the community members to provide recommendations based on the Newcomer's State of Equity in Education report. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. So we need nominations for the next one. We need 2 nominations, that trustees, someone and someone be nominated as members to the Newcomer Education Committee. So who is someone and someone?
Well,
is there any nomination?
Based on the practice and as a part of the motion, Trustee Chen should fill that first spot.
Okay, my understanding was that Trustee Chen was going to chair the committee. Is that not? So she still needs to be as part of a member?
Sorry, if I may, Trustee Chen will automatically become the chair of the committee. Okay. You're looking for 2 trustee representatives to serve on the committee.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
My apologies, I didn't realize you were looking for 2 more.
Yeah. So everyone,
Trustees can also nominate themselves, right?
yes, if they want to. Linda, you raising your hand? Trustee Shinkowski?
Yes, I would like to nominate Jamie Dumont.
Okay. Trustee Dumont, do you accept the nomination?
Sure.
Thank you, Trustee Dumont. So trustees can nominate themselves or someone else can nominate them. We need 1 more trustee.
I will take the second position.
Thank you very much, Trustee Shinkowski. Okay. So now it reads that Trustees Dumont and Trustee Shinkowski be nominated as members to the Newcomer Education Committee, and then in accordance with Procedural Bylaw 1263, Clause 42.2 states any member who introduces a motion which results in the establishment of a special committee shall chair the committee. So all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. That administration in consultation with the committee trustees, develop the terms of reference for the Newcomer Education Committee for approval by the Board of Trustees. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. That the committee provide a report including any recommendations for consideration or approval by the Board of Trustees. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you, everyone. 6.2, Indigenous Ad Hoc Committee. The following notice of motion is being presented by Trustee Dumont. A, that the motion to establish an advisory council on Indigenous Education Subcommittee in accordance with procedural bylaw section 41.0 be rescinded. B, that an Indigenous Ad Hoc Committee be established which is comprised of trustees, administration, and representatives from the community. C, that trustees blank and blank be nominated as members to the Indigenous Ad Hoc Committee, and in accordance with procedural bylaw 1263, clause 42.2 states any member who introduces a motion which results in the establishment of a special committee shall chair the committee. D, that administration, in consultation with the committee trustees, develop the terms of reference for the Indigenous Ad Hoc Committee for approval by the Board of Trustees. And E, that the committee provide a report including any recommendations for consideration or approval by the Board of Trustees. This matter will be added to the agenda for discussion at the next meeting on February 1st, 2021. 6.3, Bylaw 1292 first reading, borrowing bylaw. Moved by Trustee Broughton, seconded by Trustee Reed, that Bylaw 1292, a bylaw of the Winnipeg School Division to authorize the borrowing of monies from any bank or credit union upon credit of the Winnipeg School Division for the year 2021 be now introduced and read a first time in short. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Mr. Cochin, please read.
A bylaw of the Winnipeg School Division to authorize the borrowing of monies from any bank or credit union upon credit of the Winnipeg School Division for the year 2021.
Thank you. Agenda information. Moved by Trustee Shinkowski, seconded by Trustee Chen, that information correspondence IC01-21-IC10-21 be received as information. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Business matters as defined in Rule 44.7, moved by Trustee Dumont, seconded by Trustee Shinkowski, that the board move into business matters as defined in Rule 44.7. Carried.
Madam Chair, I would like to report on the following from our in-camera discussions. The members of the board discussed collective bargaining, gave direction regarding the Children's Heritage Fund, received an update on COVID-19 and a leaves of absence report, and discussed trustee code of conduct. Further, I move that the appointment outlined in the confidential memorandum dated January 11th, 2021 from the Chief Superintendent be approved.
Can I get a seconder, please? Trustee Broughton, all in favor? Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Further, I move that the appointment outlined in the confidential memorandum dated January 11th, 2021 from the Chief Superintendent be approved.
Can I get a seconder, please? Trustee Reed, any discussion? All those in favor? Carried.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Can I get a mover to adjourn, please? Trustee Broughton, thank you so much. Meeting adjourned.